Bills, 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 bills. As 2026 gets started, do you know how many bills you have to pay? Do you know how to pay each one of those bills? Well, you might know all of that information, but your loved ones may not know that information in an emergency. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our bills, we're going to write them all down, and we're going to keep track of them for future reference. If that sounds interesting, stay with me. Well, hi everyone, this is Crystal from A Crystal Clear Life, where we focus on planning, organizing, and living a more simplified life. And today we are talking about those pesky bills that we have to pay each month, each quarter, each twice a year, once a year, whatever it happens to be. And I think this is a great video to add to my budget series because at the beginning of every year, it is a really, really good idea to sit down and take a look at all of the bills that you have to pay throughout the year. And, you know, in the financial world, they call those sinking funds for those that are not paid every month. And just make a list of everything that you're actually paying for. And that's what I wanted to do today. A couple of years ago, I did it in my budget planner manually, where I wrote down all of the designated funds that come out each month or, you know, various months throughout the year. But I want to have a comprehensive list of all of the bills with account numbers and how to contact the company and, you know, what the login is and all of that information, okay? Because I have had situations in the past where you know, my husband has needed to go in and pay bills and maybe didn't know exactly what or how, you know, that bill was to be paid. And so as part of my organizing and recreating my budget in the digital world, I wanted to come up with this page. Okay, so if that sounds interesting, give me a thumbs up, hit that like button down below, subscribe if you have not already, and please feel free to share this with anybody else who might pay bills. And let's go ahead and get into this video. I'm feeling kind of lighthearted and squirrely today, so I apologize. But you know, if you're going to do something like bills, if you have to do some adulting work, you might as well have a little bit of fun with it, right? All right. Okay. Well, as you can see here on my screen, I kind of came up, you know, just sitting down and thinking, well, what, you know, I was marking up the designated funds that I have to set money aside for every year. And I thought, well, you know, I really do need to make a comprehensive list of all of the bills that we pay. All right. So that's what you see here on the screen. This is a simple table. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 columns going across here at the top, okay? And then I just centered my titles, turned them my favorite white on a dark color, and that's how I left it. I went through and I tried to think of everything that I could possibly need for if there was an emergency situation. You know, sometimes I think I'm like doomsday stuff, you know, like if my husband and I were traveling and I forgot to pay a bill, would my daughter know how to be able to do that? Anyway, that's what I'm kind of getting to, is to make sure that I have all of my ducks in a row for my budget information, my bill information. And I thought that I would share that with you guys too, because you keep saying, yes, we want to see more about budgeting and finance and bill paying. And this is a great place to start. So I will add this to the budgeting playlist so that you will be able to find it. Okay? All right. So what I thought I could do here is I could come up with a category for everything. And then I would list the company name, okay, and the account number for that particular bill. You know, everybody has different account numbers. Then I wanted to add the contact information, okay? So let's look at this first one that I have here. Let's say my mortgage is through a company called TIAA, and my made-up account number for today's purposes is 123324. And I decided that the contact information might be tiaamortgage.com, okay? But I wanted to show you that here you can also add links, all right? And it's just like I have added links before, okay? So when I went to tiaamortgage.com, which is the one that I thought it was, it said, no, it's now under everbank.com support or loan care, okay? So what I did is I copied this URL. Let me show you really quickly. Okay, so I'm bringing up Google to show you. All right, and so for TIAA mortgage, it came up and said it is now loan care support. And you know what? When I looked at my statement, it actually is. So anyway, so what I did is I went to this place, okay, Everbank, and I copied the URL, okay? So I just right-clicked and copied. And then when I went back to my page that I have here, I went in the cell that I wanted, and I said, insert a link. And when I did that, I wanted the word loan care to be, you know, what was highlighted for me. And then I simply pasted the address there of that web page. And I said, okay. And now you see it actually added it again. There's loan care. Okay. So when I click on loan care, it takes me back to this exact same page. Okay. All right, so I think that's pretty cool. I like being able to add links. It makes things really, really handy, okay? So that's what I wanted to do for the contact information. Maybe it is, you know, it's a PO box where you mail the, you know, the check to. So maybe it's a PO box in India River, New York, and you know, there's the information for that. So whatever the contact information is for that particular company, you have a space to put that, okay? Now, every website that you go to do any kind of bill paying always wants to know what your login is. So this is a good place for you to put your login information. Again, I'm giving you all made up stuff today. Some of these companies I've never even heard of. You know, but you might want to put something like, well, maybe it's my crystal la 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 account at Gmail, right? .com. Maybe that's the login that I use. Maybe it's, you know, Smart Mama or what, you know, whatever your login happens to be when you set it up. You need to record that, okay? And then there's a place here for you to put your password. Now, you have to be careful about putting passwords in OneNote, but OneNote also has page protection, and you can protect your budget notebook, you can protect pages, you can protect those things with a password. So I wanted to have a place here to put a password if I felt comfortable in doing that, all right? So the fake password that I put in here for you guys is, give me the money for now. I don't know, I'm just being silly today. Or under passwords, you might use a passcode or a password or dash lane or store it or something like that that stores all of your passwords electronically. And if you do, you might want to put something like C passcode or C dash lane or C store it, you know, whatever it happens to be. And you also could leave a link to that as well. Okay. All right. The next one down, and now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of bill payment, is the dual authentication location, okay? Now, what some people might say, what the heck is dual authentication? Well, that's when you try to log into a website and it says, we're going to send you a code to make sure that it's you, okay? Sometimes that code goes to your email. Sometimes that code can go to your cell phone. Sometimes that code can go to your home phone. You get to decide when you set it up where that code goes to. Okay. So it's nice to know where that code is actually going to. So here, for example, I put in, it's going to the phone number that ends in '05. So you have to think, well, is that my phone number, my home phone number, my husband's phone number, my daughter's phone number, which one is that? But the person who would be needing to pay your bills for you would know. That's handy to know because they're going to need to have that phone with them to get that code in order to be able to log into certain accounts. Okay? So I know that may be a little overkill for some people. You may be thinking, gosh, that is way too much information to collect. But in an emergency, it might be good to have. Okay? Now, the next one is the frequency of the bill. So for example, since this first one was my mortgage, I put down that I have to pay that monthly. And the next column says, when is it due? My mortgage is due on the 1st. So I put that there. Maybe your mortgage is due on the 10th or the 25th. You put your own date in there, okay? Then how does that bill get paid? Well, I could say I've got it auto pay, so it just comes out of my checking account every month and goes directly to the mortgage company. I may be somebody who still hand writes a check, puts it in the envelope and mails it. I may be somebody who has a bill payment separate account where I transfer the money into that bill payment account and then I pay it automatically from there. Where I go in and say, yes, the money's here, send the bill on such and such a date. Okay? There's all kinds of ways to pay your bills now. So that's why I put this column in here. How is it paid? So for example, this one is paid auto pay from the checking account. Okay? And I might even do the same kind of thing where I do, if I have more than one checking account, I might do that it's the checking account that ends in 34. Okay, so that whoever it is will say, well, is it the bill payment account? Is it, which one is it? So that might be handy to have. Okay, and then I also thought, well, it's kind of nice to know what the usual payment might be. So again, somebody in an emergency situation would know about how much money would be needed to pay my mortgage for the month. Okay, so I have that amount in here. All right. Now for this how it's paid column that we just talked about, I thought about, typing that every time. That's going to be a pain. So what I did is I kind of created this little table on the side of different ways that a bill might be paid. I'm sure that I'm leaving something out. So if I am, please leave me a comment and let me know so that I can add this and that we all can have the most comprehensive list that we could, all think of. The hive mind could think of together. Okay? All right, so I have one way to pay a bill is online at the website. So let's say you shop at Kohl's and you go on the Kohl's website and you pay your bill right there online. Okay? That's one way. So I put online, ONW, online, ON for online, W at the website. Okay? You can make the code whatever you want. The next one might be auto payment, bill paying, checking. Okay? So that means from my bill payment checking account, which I move money into to pay bills out of to kind of keep it small and safe. That may mean that I'm using that, but it's on auto pay, right? So let's say I'm doing that with my mortgage. I know that that $1,800 that is my average mortgage payment needs to be in there before the 1st of the month because the bank is going to automatically pull that money out on the 1st of the month, okay? Another one might be manual online payment from a checking account. So Mopsy. Sounds like one of the bunny rabbits from Beatrix Potter. Mopsy, Topsy, Flopsy, and Cottontail, or whoever they were. Anyway, manual online payment for me might mean that I log into my checking account, I sit down with my checking account up, and I say, pay this specific bill for this amount on this day. That means I do all of that manually, but it's online, okay? Maybe your bill is something that is automatically charged to your credit card. Say, for example, your Netflix subscription. Maybe that automatically gets paid to whatever credit card you have, okay? So ACC is automatic to credit card, all right? That lets you know that you can look back at the credit card bill and see that it's been paid. Some bills are actually paid by PayPal, believe it or not, or Apple Pay, which I don't have, or Google Pay, which I don't have. But, like I said, there are 10,000 ways to pay bills these days. So something like that, PayPal, PP, might be something that you want to include in your own little spreadsheet. And then there's the old-fashioned way of writing a check and handing it to the person or mailing it to them or something like that. So that would simply be CK, okay? All right, now let's get back to this main table. You understand what I'm doing here with listing all of the bills that I have. Well, I started listing the bills and then I thought, I probably should categorize them so that they're easier to find. So I did that. I went in and I added a row above my mortgage and it says housing. See it right here? Actually, let's make that bold and italicized so it stands out a little bit more, okay? So under housing, I have my mortgage or my rent. I could go down here. Maybe I have a vacation home, or a timeshare or something like that, that I have to pay a maintenance fee on, or we go to the same beach house every year and I know how much that's going to cost. I could put all that in here if I wanted to, okay? So just some housing costs here. That's just for the physical building, okay? Then moving on, I did utilities. Now, let's say I want this category to be the same as this one. Not category, but the format of it, okay? In case you don't know, I want to show you a formatting tool. I can go down here and highlight the formatting of the word housing, click on the formatting tool, then I can click the formatting tool again and come down here to utilities and notice that it changes the formatting to utilities to look just like, it's kind of that label or, title or whatever you want to call it, okay? So I can click the formatting tool and I have a bunch of extra ones down here and I can actually do all of these at one time, like so, and it will change the formatting to all of those, okay? So if you don't know about the formatting tool, hopefully you learned something new, okay? All right, so under utilities, I put things like electric, maybe it's the Virginia Power Company and that's their account number and that's the website. Again, I could make that a link if I wanted to. I have my login, I have the, the passcode or the password keeper or whatever it is that you're happening to use. And again, the frequency, maybe the electric company doesn't have dual authentication. So if they don't, I could just say not applicable, meaning they don't have that, okay? It's better to put something in the cell so that the person who's looking at the information has an idea that, you actually thought about that and you didn't just forget to fill something in, okay? All right, and then on down here for how it's paid, I made a note that I still get a paper bill in the mail and that I manually pay that online from my checking account. So manual online from my checking account. Remember when we talked about this little code up here, right? So that's how I would do that, okay? Sometimes you might list that, that you don't get a bill. Maybe it's a, one that comes in your email or something like that, or you have to go online and view the bill, all right? So under utilities, I put electric, telephone, internet, gas or propane or oil if you use any of those things, water if you're on city water. I actually don't have a water bill because I live and have a well, so I'm in charge of my own water. And then I came up with other categories that might be important, okay? Something like credit cards. It's nice for people to know in an emergency situation how many credit cards you actually have and how many you actually use and when those bills might be due, okay? So again, you might have a Kohl's card, but you may only use that twice a year at Christmas or something like that, okay? So that would be, very infrequently. So over here, when it says, when is that bill due? You could say, when I've used it, or it varies, or, something like that, okay? All right, There's one other thing that I wanted to show you um, about um, using tables, which some of you may not know. Let me do this. Let me take out timeshare. Let me just take that word out. And I'm going to put Chase in here. And that is a credit card. Okay. And I can fill that whole row out. But now if I want that credit card actually down here underneath the category of credit cards, all I need to do in this table is I need to go over here to this little gray handle and grab hold of it by clicking down on the mouse, dragging it. See how it's moving it down through the table until I get it right underneath credit cards where I want it. Okay? So that's very handy, I think, when you're organizing things. You don't have to say, oh, I've got to move this whole row to do that. You can just grab those little gray handles on the side. Hopefully you can see that. I know they're very light. You can grab it and you can move it wherever you would like. Okay? All right, that's pretty cool. Okay, vehicles and transportation. This might include car payments, car insurance that you have to do, emissions if your state that tracks that, registration for your vehicles. It also could include things like transportation if you are somebody who takes the subway or train to work, if you ride the bus to work, any of those parking, any of those costs that are related to your vehicle that are regular monthly bills that you have to pay or quarterly bills or something like that, okay? Remember, this is not expense tracking. This is listing the bills that are paid on a regular basis, so if there's an emergency, somebody knows how to help you out, okay? All right, the next one down here would be subscriptions. And subscriptions could be all kinds of things. They could be subscriptions to newspapers or magazines. They could be, a lot of places do, I don't know, they even do like subscription dog box things where every month your dog gets a new toy and a new treat, right? And those things are easy to forget, but they really should be included on your subscriptions list so that you know where your money's going. And again, somebody else might say, oh, I need to cancel that, or let me go ahead and pay that because, that's important for, for the pet or whatever. So subscriptions could be things like Netflix. They could be cable subscriptions. They could be, all kinds of things that come on a regular basis, okay? Taxes. Some people only pay their taxes once a year. People that have businesses like myself have to pay taxes quarterly. So it's important to know that, again, if something were to happen to me, someone would know to go ahead and pay my quarterly taxes. And by writing in here about what the average cost of those taxes is, that would be very helpful. Then at least the IRS knows you're making an attempt to get things right. Okay? All right. Insurance could be health insurance, car insurance, home insurance, liability insurance, pet insurance, whatever it happens to be that you're insuring. And that's a good place to put that as well. Okay. Services I put down here, that might include things like maybe you have a housekeeper that comes once a month or twice a month. Maybe you have a lawn service that you pay once a month to cut the grass or something like that. Maybe you have, I don't know, a hairdresser, nail appointments, whatever it is that you do on a regular basis, that bill needs to be paid on a regular basis, okay? So I put services down there for that. Also, the next category is debt payoff and loans. Maybe you have a home equity loan. Maybe you're still paying on a student loan. Maybe you have a car payment that you're making, okay? All of those things might be set up to be paid automatically, okay? And you want to keep track of those. So I put loans down there as well, okay? And then investments. Some people have money left over and they want to do an automatic payment for their investing. Maybe they invest, oh, I don't know, when I was in college, I used to invest $12.50 out of every paycheck to get a savings bond. And so I thought I was doing a good job back then, and I was very proud of that fact. But investments is something that people like to set up to happen on a recurring basis. Okay. And then the last one that I could think of over the weekend when I was planning this video was charities and donations. Maybe you give to your local church, and that is a monthly or weekly donation that you make, every Sunday when you go, or maybe you have it set up to come out automatically of your checking account. Maybe you support public television because your kids love Sesame Street. Maybe you give to, Doctors Without Borders or Jose Andres kitchens, that are helping feed people. Maybe you give to the blood bank. Maybe you give to, I don't know, the American Cancer Society, and you do that once a year on your mother's birthday because your mother died of cancer. I don't know what your donations might be, but it's a good idea to keep track of those so that you don't forget, and that, again, in case of emergency, somebody else doesn't forget to do that as well. Okay? All right. Well, curious to know what you guys think about this. You may look at it and think, I don't think I would ever need something like that. But you might. You absolutely might. Because you just never know when something's going to happen. Okay? Again, leave me a comment. Let me know. What did I miss? Is there a category that I missed? Is there a column, something else that you think would be helpful to know for those bills? Let me know if you found a different way to kind of keep track of this. My husband said I would put that in a spreadsheet. I said, I know you would. You're a spreadsheet man, and I understand that you would put that in a spreadsheet. And I could do a spreadsheet in OneNote as well. I could click on this whole thing, and I could go up to table right here, and it says convert to an Excel spreadsheet. And if it were big and calculating numbers, I might do that. But it's really just tracking information. And if something happens and I say, you know what, I don't have to pay a water bill, I can just go in here and delete that. I can take the whole row out if I want. So I can modify and change this. And my plan is, just like I used to do in my paper one, is I'm going to update this every year at the beginning and put it in my budget section so that I can keep track of the bills that I have to pay throughout the year. Okay? And if something new comes along, it's very easy. It's right here in my budget notebook. I can go ahead and add that. All right. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And until next time, here's hoping that you can live a more simplified and organized life through better planning. I use OneNote as my life management tool. It stores everything for me. Until next time. Okay, bye. Honey's sitting over there today. He's so big. What was I thinking?